Joining me now is Trevor Loudon. He's an expert, as you know, on communism and so many other things. He joins us now. Trevor, welcome back to the broadcast. Thank you for being with us.
Always a pleasure, Brandon. Great to be on. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Trevor, I am very distressed about how Tucker Carlson keeps platforming people that are anti-Semites, making horrible comments about the Jews. I'm tired of it. And now he's had on this Nick Fuentes. I don't know a lot about Nick, other than I know he's very popular with a lot of young people, and he's very says a lot of things that are, I think, anti-Semitic. But apparently, he also has an affinity for Stalin. Here he is just recently on Tucker Carlson. Listen.
So it was like late December. It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's?
Mm-hmm. Always an admirer. But we don't need to go into that. I guess.
Well, that's okay. Let's get back to it. We'll circle back to that.
It was weird because the reason I mentioned that, it was almost like, because I woke up that day and I was like, oh, it's December 18th. And I was just like very acutely aware of like, today's like a strange day. This is the day that the attempt happened. So
okay, like, so let me just play this first part again, folks. Is this not cringy? Logan, is this guy on the spectrum?
So it was like late December. It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's?
Mm-hmm. Always an admirer. But
that is really cringy. What do you make of that?
Well, you know, it's pretty shocking. You know, one of the biggest mass murderers in history, one of the cruelest individuals, the man who basically ordered the famine that killed millions of Ukrainians, who locked tons of people in the gulags. They say he's responsible for at least 20 million deaths. And you'd admire this guy. This is a guy who claims to be America first. You know, Stalin, the guy who stole our atom bomb secret so he could destroy us. Yeah, well, see, this is Fuentes, this is a smart young man who's very popular and has completely lost his way. He started out as a libertarian, became a Trump supporter, and now he is, I hate to use the word fascist, but he's moving in that sort of direction, a totalitarian type of direction. And, it's horrible to see someone who would lose their way like that, just like Candace Owens has lost his way, and Tucker Carlson has also lost his way.
Tell me more about Stalin. How many did he murder?
Well, at least 20 million, at least. In the gulags, they say it was about that number. He also purged his generals. He slaughtered people he didn't like. He killed most of his own cabinet. He was a sadist. He used to make his cabinet dance with each other in front of him for his own amusement, to humiliate them. But he oversaw his troops raped something like 2 million German women in the aftermath of World War II, officially sanctioned by the sound of it. He imprisoned hundreds of thousands of prisoners from the Eastern European countries, put them in the gulags and sent them to their deaths over long periods of time. It's hard to imagine a more sadistic butcher in world history, a hardcore Marxist-Leninist, a seminary student turned bank robber, turned revolutionary, turned ultra-sadist. And this is someone you would admire. It's no better than admiring Hitler.
Well, I think some of these people out there do, or they at least defend him. He's misunderstood, they say.
Yeah. See, what we're seeing on the US right, we're seeing a division in the US right between those, and I think you and I fit to this category, Brandon. You know, we believe in the Constitution. We believe that America is a Christian nation. We support allies. We support a sound education system. We support strong defenses. We support Israel and other countries oppressed, under attack by enemy forces. It's when you grow up in the Reagan era, it's very easy to know who you're with and who you're against. But there's been a real infiltration of the conservative movement by borderline fascists. This started with the alt-right, many of whom were very pro-Russia, very pro-Nazi. And it's carried on, and this has been helped along by QAnon. It's been helped along by some people, even in the libertarian movement. And this guy Nick Fuentes was a libertarian for some time. But you're seeing this fascistic, very anti-Israel, very anti-Jewish trend that's coming into the young conservative movement. And it's very, very troubling. And Nick Fuentes is their poster boy. Doesn't mean he subscribes to all of those views, but he's the poster boy of many of these people.
Well, I think the guys in the control room say that he's quite popular with the young people, right, guys?
Yeah.
They just said very popular. Do you think he could run for office and win? Huh? One guy says no, and Logan says yes. In the future, what do you think he could run for and win, Logan? He says once the older generation dies out, the younger generation would probably elect a guy like this, governor, senator, president.
Yeah, I think that's feasible. I think he's a little bit like, I don't know about Nick Fuentes himself. I think he might have pushed it too far already. Like, a lot of us thought that Candace Owens might be destined for higher office at one point, but she's gone completely down the anti-Semitic train, echoing Russian propaganda like you wouldn't believe. She has burned all future bridges. I think Tucker Carlson is well on that way as well. And Nick Fuentes, I think, is going to burn all his bridges if he hasn't already done so.
But we also never thought people like AOC could get elected, or that Talita
Rashida Tlaib.
I mean, dancing around with the Palestinian flag years ago. I mean, these people are like crazy. And yet they keep getting elected.
Yeah, and that is true. That is a point. I'd be very surprised if Nick Fuentes could get elected to anything, certainly not in today's climate. But as Logan says, who knows what it's going to be like in 15 years' time,
True. But how is he really any different than the guy running for mayor in New York?
Well, they're both extremists. Nick seems to have a very collectivist streak in him, a very semi-totalitarian streak, I think. And certainly militantly anti-Israel and obsessively anti-Israel. So, he would have a few problems, I think. Mm-hmm. But he's got his little grouper, they call themselves groupers. He's got his disciples, he's got his groupies, etc.
What do they call themselves?
Groupers.
What does that mean?
I don't know. I should have looked that up.
Do you guys in the control room
Doesn't sound anything sanitary.
Well, why don't you look it up for me, please? I'm learning a lot tonight. You guys in the control room knew that. What, Logan? Far right, alt-right nationalist? That's what a grouper is? A groiper.
The word
for
his definition.
Yeah.
It's his word for America first.
Yeah, well, I don't think he represents real America first.
No,
he
not.
represents a kind of America I would not like to live in, because it would be a semi-fascist America.
How do these guys get traction? How do they get traction?
Well, see, what he is a reaction to woke, okay? So wokeism, and most of these people don't even understand this. Wokeism is Marxism. It was given to us by the Russians and the Chinese, and it's pushed this political correctness and this over feminization and demasculated young men. This is all completely driven by the Russians and the Chinese. So these young men react to this. They're disgusted and appalled by it, which we all are. But the alternative is not Reagan conservatism. The alternative is a semi-fascist type of reaction. And they will say, well, America can't deal with this wokeism. We're allowing it to go crazy. We need authoritarianism. We need a strong state that will stamp out these people, and we need to push them and crush our enemies. Now, I'm a believer in the Constitution. There are enough laws on the books,
yes,
if applied, to take down every communist party and every traitor in the country. They're not being applied. We don't need an authoritarian state. We just need to use the laws we have. I just finished an interview where we talked about how Zoran Mandami has basically almost certainly deceived the authorities when he applied for his immigration status, for his citizenship, and he could be expelled on those grounds. And the question is, will Pam Bondi do it? He joined Democratic Socialists. He became a citizen in 2018. He joined Democratic Socialists of America, a Marxist communist group, in 2017, and supported the Holy Land Five, Hamas supporters, also in 2017. Now, did he declare this on his citizenship application? And also, if you join one of these organizations within 5 years of becoming a citizen, you can also be expelled. And this has been done before. So we just need to apply the laws that are there. We don't need to become totalitarians or authoritarians or fascists. But young people, guided by Nick Fuentes and others, I believe, are going down the semi-fascist road because they don't understand what a real constitutional America can do if the leaders have the guts to do it.
Now, we
don't need one tyranny to fight another. We need to stick to the Constitution and use the laws properly against subversives.
And you know what's very interesting is I think the feminism, and the feminization of the American male through cultural Marxism, which, I've been talking about that for decades, and the Frankfurt School, which people now called woke. I wish they would just call it what it is, because woke is too nice. Woke is not descriptive enough. What it is cultural Marxism. And when I started talking about this so aggressively around 2003, people thought, he won't shut up about cultural Marxism. And I kept trying to tell them what's coming. We did our first seminar on this in November of 1997. Our first seminar at Worldview Weekend was November 1997 on cultural Marxism. And we had about 1,000 people at that Minnesota Worldview Weekend. And even some of the people were like, why are we discussing this? The Berlin Wall just fell a few years ago. And we were trying to explain, but you don't understand. It's not over. So I think the cultural Marxism, which included the Frankfurt School's goal of destroying the American male, destroying the masculine, patriotic male, making the American male feel ashamed, making him sit down and be quiet because otherwise he's coming off as a caveman, an intolerant, a bigot, whatever words they want to use, a white supremacist now. These are all words they're putting on to men. That's not new. It was written by one of the Frankfurt School guys, Theodore Adorno, in his book 1950, that was all about authoritarianism and his F scale test. And the F, didn't mean fail. The F meant, as you know, Trevor, fascist. That if you were someone that had convictions and there are certain topics that were not open to discussion and you wouldn't even discuss it, you were considered intolerant, narrow-minded, rigid. That was a sign of a fascist, the F scale test. 1950, authoritarianism, white supremacy. These are not new terms, but this hollowed out the American male. And it left us with a bunch of these new so-called pastors, these feminized guys that you look at them, you think, are they gay? They got a wife and children, but is that cover? Because it seems like so many of these so-called pastors, they just seem like they got to be gay. They look gay, they act gay, they dress gay. They're feminized,
isn't it?
What?
It's fashionable to be gay because you don't want to be a toxic male. You got to be effeminate. But you're absolutely right, Brandon. And you were onto this well before most. I've got to give you full credit for that. We were given the Frankfurt School and the Soviets and then the Chinese gave us wokeness, political correctness, the feminization of men. This was a deliberate communist program enforced over many years through the teachers' unions in the schools and through the left-wing churches. And so you get these young men who don't know what they are, they feel marginalized, and they want to be males, right? And what comes along? The Russians come along with their alt-right, their anti-wokeism, their Putinism, their Duginism, their Yavanism. And this is what's feeding the movement behind Nick Fuentes. So the Russians and the Chinese and the Frankfurt School gave us wokeness, and then we're getting the reaction coming out of the Russian camp, filtered through the QAnon, filtered through the Fuentes movement and the Candace Owen movement and the Tucker Carlson movement. This is the anti-woke movement, but it's fascism, it's communism, it's fascism, it's totalitarian. And here we are in the middle, Brannon, who always believed that men were men and women were women, never wavered on that belief, always believed in God and the Constitution, always believed in supporting our allies, having a strong America, and having a law and using the law to get rid of criminal subversives. We've never really wavered, have we?
Nope.
But they drove the young men, they used their political correctness to drive the young men into a state of desperation, and then the solution is fascism. The solution is totalitarianism.
And you know what the other solution is for the evangelical world? It is the Reconstructionists, the Dominionists, the Doug Wilsons, the hyper-Calvinist Doug Wilsons, the what seems to be a very strong brand of hating on women, relocating women down to their job is to make sandwiches. I mean, this is the kind of stupid stuff that Doug Wilson has said. Do you know who I'm talking about? This
I vaguely know, but I know
absolute disgusting looking individual.
But
he obviously is never going to preach against gluttony, but boy, he wants to preach against every other sin in the world. He's, in my opinion, a total slob. All right, but he bangs his chest. And acts like he's this strong man and we're leaders and we're men. And what they are, in my opinion, is a theological cult. And they are passing off as the alternative to this wimpy, feminized, infiltrated cultural Marxism, Marxianity, quote, Christianity. And the reaction is, oh, we want guys like Mark Dever and their crudeness and their shock jock, and then Doug Wilson, and now they're abolitionists, they're abortion abolitionists. Whereas if you and I say, hey, I'm not for abortion, but I'll take that legislation that outlaws it in every instance other than rape and incest.
That's an improvement.
It's an improvement. We're going to save lives. Babies will be saved. But they come out and they classify us as not real Christians. We're compromised. Yeah. And this is and many of them are into Reconstructionism. They want to create a Christian theocracy. They openly talk about how they want to create these Christian cities and governments. Now, am I for Christian values? Absolutely. That's the underpinning of our constitutional republic, the laws of nature, nature's God. But I'm not for a theocracy. And so I am seeing the reaction in not only as you're describing it with Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, in the political world, in the, quote, Christian and evangelical world, these guys now are penetrating across every church denomination. People that used to be fundamentalist Baptist that would have never gone down the amillennial route. They would never gone down the let's build the kingdom of God on earth route, the Reconstructionist, the kingdom now, dominion now. They would have never gone down this route. Their traditions aren't for that, but they do now. These guys have penetrated every denomination. And I think it's because of what you're saying about why Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, these other guys are becoming popular is a reaction to the demasculization and the trashing of a patriarchal society. And they think the alternative is to go to this extremism. And
this caveman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Well, see, look, the first thing to say is a strong man doesn't have to say, I'm a strong man.
That's right.
You know, and this is exactly, I think it's a good analogy, Brownon. The church has been pushed so far down the pansy pastor route, down the woke church route, that you get a reaction to that. But the reaction should be to restore Christianity to a sane, rational, basis. There was nothing wrong with it. And so we got driven down one route, but you don't you don't oppose communism with fascism. You oppose communism with the law and the Constitution. You don't oppose pansy Christianity with fascist Christianity. You get Christianity back on an even keel.
Yeah.
One extreme or another is just, see, the whole goal of the Russians and the Chinese, and this is all driven from overseas, and the Iranians too, is to get us divided into extreme camps.
Yeah.
There used to be a real consensus in America. We all knew what a conservative was, and most Democrats were conservative to some degree. We all knew what mainstream Christianity was, and the country functioned pretty well. We had shared values. There was minor divisions, but nothing like we have now. So they pushed the politics way to the left. They pushed the church's way to the left. Then the same enemies are pushing the politics into a fascist direction and the churches into a sort of theocratic direction, like they think we should be the mullahs of Iran or something.
Yep. Well, do you know they're even bemoaning women voting? They're on video bemoaning women getting the right to vote. I mean, these guys are not unapologetic in their extremism, and they're rising within so-called evangelicalism. And I'm telling you right now, they are setting up the church, the real Christians, for persecution.
Yeah, because you can't imagine, you want to win people's hearts over. Some young woman who's just graduated college and is looking for some spiritual direction and wants to make something of her life is not going to be inspired by these people. She's not going to want to join their church. And so, there are eternal truths in politics and religion. And America is the nation in the world that has come closest to bringing those eternal truths into fruition, both religiously and politically. And because we have been driven off track by the hard left, guided by the Russians and the Chinese and all these people in the Frankfurt School, doesn't mean we should overcorrect by basically bringing Hitler into politics and the mullahs into religion.
Amen to that.
That's not the answer.
Listen to this.
It's not the answer at all.
Listen to this clip by Nick Fuentes and Tucker.
If everything is inherited, then there's no hope for the continuation of America. Mm-hmm. Do you see that?
Yeah, I don't think it's genetically inherited. And what you're saying about putting aside the tribal interest for the corporate interest,
yes,
that's absolutely the case. And that's the only way the country's going to stay together.
Exactly.
And
that's my concern.
And I absolutely agree with you. I would say, though, that the main challenge to that, a big challenge to that, is organized Jewry in America. I don't think Bill Ackman is capable of that. I don't think Sheldon Adelson is capable of that. I don't think Yoram Hazony is capable of that, for that matter. And many other, on the right and the left. And I see Jewishness as the common denominator. And you're right. It's not all Jewish people feel the same way. No one would say that, but that does seem to be the common denominator. And I just feel like it needs to be called out explicitly. And I like what you said. If the other day, if you're serving in another country's military or have dual citizenship, you really can't be a part of this project.
Well, that's just and that's an easy one, but I am much more comfortable as a Christian and an American keeping it on that level because, it's easy to just set universal rules that apply to everyone, not just the Jews or the Christians or the anybody, just like Americans can only serve in the U.S. military or they lose their passport. I mean, I don't know. That's not hard. And I don't know. Why not just say that?
Say what?
That. Why not make every statement about how Americans ought to behave applicable to all Americans? Like it's the defense of universal values that will hold the country together and the emphasis on parochial group values that will break it apart inevitably.
Because this is a particular issue and it's acute. Like I said, I think they are unique in that way. I think that's a unique issue, especially in the Republican Party, especially in the conservative scene.
So how would you like this all to be resolved?
What I would like is for the U.S. government to not be influenced by these kinds of foreign allegiances, not with money that comes from, American citizens like Sheldon Adelson, not from foreign lobbyists. So, I mean, in terms of tangible things, I don't think we disagree on any of it. Like registering AIPAC and FARA, banning dual citizenship. Like I'm basically in agreement.
I think 80% of the public agrees with those things. So that's kind of what gets me a little bit annoyed. It's like these are like America First, the concept. It's the most popular, self-evidently true idea you could have. Like, don't let foreign powers, especially tiny ones far away, control your country. Like,
oh, you mean like Qatar?
Of course not.
Yeah, like Qatar.
Yeah,
Notice they never discuss Islam. Everything's about the Jews. I mean, the Jews make up what 1% of the global population, and the Muslims make up billions, and they're all worried about the Jews. But did you ever hear Tucker mention Qatar? Well, are the Muslims?
Well, he should know them well because he's been getting money from them. But look, did you notice the false alternative that Nick Fuentes came out with? We cannot allow the tribal to compete with the corporate. Well, America's not a tribal nation and it's not a corporate nation. It's a constitutional nation of individuals. So we don't tolerate tribalism and we don't want corporatism. Corporatism is fascism. So he said we're either going to have balkanization or we have fascism. That right there tells you what he's on about. But the thing there, Russia, China, Iran, the cartels, the Cubans have way more power in America than Israel's got. And Israel's an ally. I don't mind. I think Israel should have some influence in America. It doesn't control America. It doesn't have near the influence that China has.
Well, if they control America,
gave us Barack Obama and China gave us Barack Obama and Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. How many presidential candidates has AIPAC ever given us?
And if the Jews were controlling America, don't you think they would have arrested and prosecuted all of these Jew haters out on the streets in America and the college campuses and the professors? They would have never gotten, those professors would have never gotten those jobs and gotten to that spot. The Jews, I just looked it up, 0.2% of global population. 0.2. Okay, what percentage is Islam, Muslims? 24%. 1.9 billion. 24% of global population are Muslims. That's 1.9 billion compared to the Jews, which is 0.2%. It's like 15 million Jews.
Well, that's exactly right. So this is complete red herring. We are faced by very dangerous enemies in Iran, China, Russia, Cuba, who have killed Americans and attempted to kill Americans and still are with their fentanyl, their terrorism, etc. But AIPAC's the problem. Look, if you're on the left and you hate Israel, it could be because you hate Jews or you're a communist and you want to bring Israel down because Israel is an impediment to communism. If you're on the right and you don't like Israel, it's almost always because you don't like Jews. Simple as that. I think Fuentes is being disingenuous here. I think he genuinely, and this is my opinion, genuinely has an aversion to Jews, as per se, sees Jews as a major problem in the world, much like Hitler did, much like the Nazis did, that the Jews are disproportionately malevolent and cause a lot of trouble. They have influence way out of proportion to their numbers, a malevolent influence. And this is now becoming a popular sentiment amongst the young people. I was talking to my daughter in New Zealand lately, and she says, why are my friends hating Jews now? Why is it all popular to hate Jews? This is in New Zealand. This is becoming a sentiment amongst young people. It's okay and popular and even fashionable to be down on the Jews. That's a very serious thing.
Now let's switch real quick on to SNAP. Supposedly this runs out Saturday, November 1st. Who knows? Between now and Saturday, maybe they'll come up with something and open the government up. But they've tried to vote on a clean resolution multiple times. It's not happening. Apparently, the Democrats are saying, look, our donors are going to be really upset with us if we open the government. And I don't know if by donors they mean George Soros types or what. But what do you think is the probability that they're not opening the government and going to cancel and run out of SNAP money? And by the way, we're now reading that the SNAP money, 59% of all illegal aliens are on the SNAP money. 59% of all illegal aliens are collecting food stamps. That's what we're being told. So you thought it was bad enough that we had some folks who are here that are, American citizens, born and bred and raised here, that, might create a little trouble if they don't get their food for themselves or their children. Okay, we don't want to see anybody go hungry or starve. We don't want to see it thrown onto the children. But what if you have millions of illegals that are here who are already criminals because they're here illegally and are here who hate America, hate our country? What are the odds that the cultural Marxist Democrats are doing this on purpose, been waiting for this deadline so that they can then use this for the communist tactic of pressure from above? That'd be them, the members of the House and the Senate and the governors, pressure from above and then pressure from below at the street level. What do you think the odds are that this will be resolved by Saturday? And do you think this is being put into the equation so they can gaslight President Trump? They will get some of these people to go do things. Maybe a flash mob shows up at grocery stores and they start looting grocery stores. And then all of a sudden we see this going on all over the country, kind of like we saw in 2020, right? And now President Trump says, I'm not going to tolerate it. And he starts sending out his strike force, which, by the way, they're preparing to have strike forces available to hit every state by April of 2026. So he starts sending out strike forces. Now they catch this on the media and everybody's cell phones. And they now use the predictive prophecy that Trump is a tyrant. He's a dictator. He's wannabe.
He's a fascist.
And now he's a fascist. Now we're going to bait him into doing what it is we want him to do so that we have the video footage rolling into the midterms. Do you think there's any chance they'll solve this by Saturday? And do you think they are setting a trap? Or do you think this is just, they're not thinking that far?
I think unless the Republicans cave, the Democrats will not solve this. The Democrats want this. They want to prove that Trump is an authoritarian. They want to plunge the country into chaos. The Democrats never complained about Black Lives Matter when they were burning cities and looting stores. Kamala Harris cheered them on, said we need more of it. So the Democrats are fully on the side of the radical left, and they want to lead this country into a revolutionary situation, violence, all of it, if they can do that. And they will use this opportunity. I'm sure there's little communist groups sitting out there right now plotting about which supermarkets they're going to hit. I guarantee it. We know that Black Lives Matter was a communist operation 100%. Chinese communist operation. I think it's inconceivable that America's enemies will not try and exploit the situation and make any rioting or chaos worse and worse and worse. You know, they'll either try and make Trump capitulate or make him react. And the communists say it's not the action, it's the reaction. Just like we were talking about before with the wokeism, it's not the action, it's the reaction that we're looking for. They want to, you know, drive males crazy, so they overreact. They want to drive Trump crazy. They want anarchy in the streets, so he overreacts. You imagine if we had a big riot and we had a Kent State situation with 3 or 4 people got shot or something like that.
Yeah, that's what they
Imagine
want.
what that would do.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let me switch to another topic before we run out of time here. One American News had a reporter on the ground in Portland the other day. And this reporter gets into an altercation. But you're about to see the host and the reporter talk about how the police in Portland are now Antifa. That the police are pro-Antifa. Now, I warned my radio audience. I warned my radio audience probably 10, 12 plus years ago. Stop honoring people simply because they wear a badge or a uniform. Honor those who are worthy of honor. That's what the Bible says. Give honor to those who are worthy of honor. I said every tin-pot dictator wears a uniform with a chest full of medals, right? And you're going to find, and I was particularly onto this maybe even 15 years ago, because I was studying so intensely for my book, Becoming Religious Reich, and I was writing about the Holocaust and how the military was used and how the police were used to round up the Jews and to round up Christians who were defending the Jews and speaking up and speaking out about the fascist system of Hitler. And I said, if we don't stop worshiping people that wear a uniform, your kids and grandkids are going to be so confused when good people stand up against people who are wearing uniforms. When the cops come to knock on your door to arrest you because you're a Christian, are you going to go along or are you going to resist? Well, some of you may want to go along. That's whatever God calls you to do. Others may say, I'm sorry, they are not operating as legitimate police anymore under our Constitution. They are no longer ministers of righteousness to reward the righteous and punish the wicked per Romans 13. They're just criminals. And I will deal with them as I do any criminal that tries to remove me from my home. And some people may choose to do that. Everybody's got to do what's according to their convictions and conscience. And I said, but when tyranny comes running over top of us with people in uniforms and no one wants to resist because they're all wearing uniforms because you've been told to kiss the feet if everybody wears a uniform, well, don't be shocked. And I'm sure a lot of my audience 15 years ago thought, what is he talking about? Mm-hmm. Well, now we, of course, saw Biden with the military behind him calling Trump supporters, America First people, conservatives, patriots, constitutionalists, domestic terrorists, right? We saw what they did to people that went peacefully and patriotically and just stood on the lawn of the U.S. Capitol, didn't even go in the building. And they too got arrested and thrown in jail without trials, like a third world communist country. And now we're hearing, and I said, look, in the last few years, you know that your police chiefs, many of them are elected by the city council. Many of the city council are full-on Marxist and Islamist. So don't be shocked when the Islamist and the Marxist are running the police departments. And we're seeing them even make their police badges now in Arabic in places like Michigan. We're seeing the FBI kneel, take a knee in honor of Antifa, a communist group. Many of them, thankfully, under the Trump administration 2.0 have been fired. Thank you, Kash Patel and others for that. Thank you. But we know that many of these police departments are full of leadership that answers to a Marxist city council. So what do you know, before I play the clip, of this accusation that the police in Portland are now doing the bidding and allowing Antifa to hide behind them?
Well, I've always said Antifa is the military wing of the Democratic Party and the communist movement. So they do things, they intimidate people, they attack conservatives, they patrol the streets. You know, the original Antifa in Germany was the military wing, the street wing of the German Communist Party. So these are not anti-fascists. They are totalitarians. They are thugs. But, you know, if you're a top cop in Portland and you've been there for a few years, you're part of the system. You're part of the democratic socialist machine that runs Portland. Now, so who's going to pay your pension? What have you grown up in? What's the culture? You know, you are part of the progressive socialist culture. They pay your money. They're going to pay your pension. Why the heck are you going to stand against your Antifa, which is just another branch of the machine? They're going to cooperate with it. Doesn't mean that every low-level cop agrees with this, but if you've been in the system in Portland for long enough, you are part of the system.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in Chicago long enough in the cops, you're part of the system. You know, the police are different depending on the political complexion of the city you're in.
Yep.
If you go to Omaha, Nebraska, your cops are probably going to be salt of the earth. If you come to Florida, they're going to be great. I've had great experiences with cops in Florida. But if you go to Portland, many of them will not be, especially the higher ranks, the political ones, the political appointees. They are going to be, you know, they're going to be part of the police state.
Mm.
You know, cops follow orders. You know, they've done surveys on cops. Would you be willing to, you know, they're going to put the orders they're given above sometimes the legality of the situation, sometimes the constitutional rights of the people. You know, we've seen this happen in Ruby Ridge. We've seen this happen with the ATF, and we've seen it happen many times. So, yeah, you are wise. If you know your local cops, get on well with them, but don't assume the cops in these big left-wing cities are on your side or are going to be following the Constitution.
Mm. So here's what happened on One American News the other night.
Portland mayor and the Portland Police Department in chief are going to have a surprise from Trump's DOJ. But fill us in on the response you've seen from that mayor, from the local prosecutor, and from the chief of police. Because to me, these three are so corrupt, they're the ones allowing this to happen every day.
It's absolutely. We have so much video of watching. We call them Cop Tifa because
Cop Tifa. We call them Cop Tifa. Now it's not going to play, all right?
We call them Cop Tifa because Antifa runs the police here. It's absolutely evident. We have every bit of that type of video out there to the point where we have people out here. See, we have look at how triggered they get. Look at that. Yeah, Antifa runs the cops.
Oh, you know, because my brother's a cop.
Well, your brother needs to do a better job because he's terrible at it.
Yeah, please tell him not to interrupt our interview. Yeah, go harass somebody else, pal. Go harass somebody else.
Everybody doing a show, but you're not going to come up here. The cops are Antifa.
You're full of crap. You're just full of shit.
We've got the video that shows otherwise. Yeah, we do.
I wish you could hear me. I'd fill him in on what we've seen cops do.
Wait, can I ask you something?
Dan Ball has a question for you.
Yeah, since you're going to interrupt my show, pal.
Go ahead, Dan. Hey, I'll give him the question.
Between Antifa.
Do you know the Summer of Love in 1969 is over? Do you realize the hippie movement died long ago? You obviously went and got a job.
Antifa means anti-fascist.
Not when you used it.
Chad, just walk away from that guy.
Go play games.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this.
Just walk away. Just ignore him. Just ignore him.
We the people do.
He's one of them. He's one of those. He's one of those older white liberals who thinks that Antifa is fighting a fascist king like Trump. He doesn't understand how violent they get. Look at him.
Oh, yeah, I want to see it.
Yeah, okay. I bet you do.
Wow.
See, this is what we're dealing with. This is how stupid things are out here. No, you can't. Excuse me.
Yeah.
No, you can't. Get out. Back up from me. I need you to give me room.
If he touches you, we got it on camera, and we'll get him for assault for you. There you go. Cam's backing him up.
We are here. Back off.
Whoa, 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 brother. That's assault.
That's assault.
You better give your name. You're getting arrested tonight,
assault,
pal.
Man. This is what I'm talking about. You got it right here. This is why I came to the ICE facility to do this hit, Dan.
And that's not some crazy 23-year-old kid in all black mask in his face. He's like a 70-year-old white liberal crazy man.
What's your name?
Let me ask you, what is it with all these older white people that do this, that show up at the No Kings rally? Are you shocked by that?
Well, no, because these are the 60s and 70s radicals who've never grown up. You know, these people marched in support of the Viet Cong in the 60s. Then they loved Fidel Castro and the Sandinistas. And then they marched in the World Trade Organization riots and whatever. They are hardcore on the left, and that's their life. That's their whole consciousness is framed this way. So no, there are people like this in every community.
These are your,
Not many,
sadly, these
thankfully.
are many of these people, I bet you, are former school teachers and professors.
Oh, no, not many of them. The majority of them, I would say. And this is a sad thing because, you know, they are the biggest child molesters in the country. They just warp kids' minds. That's all they do. And they go into the teaching profession, especially to do that. You know, it's a good union job. They get to shape kids' minds. They get to turn out little clones of themselves and make themselves feel good about it. You know, the quicker we can get rid of public schools, the better for everybody concerned.
Absolutely.
You know, that gentleman there has probably never done a real day's work in his life. Went to college, become a communist, and then became a school teacher. And now he's retired and dreaming of his former glories, marching for the Sandinistas.
Now, this is, then we'll wrap. Here is, after Portland police reluctantly took an insurgent into custody at the ICE facility, one of the officers hoisted the F Trump flag. This is what they're talking about. Okay, I won't play any audio because I don't know what kind of cussing is going on. I'll take that off. But you're going to watch one of these cops. After that, I guess they reluctantly arrested the guy. And then the cop is going to himself start raising the blank Trump flag. There you go. Yep, there you go. And apparently they have a lot of video footage of this kind of thing. So your police in some of these cities are now in cahoots with the Marxist Antifa. And in some of the cities, they're in cahoots with the Islamic terrorists, which makes me wonder if we see an October 7th style attack on America, how do we know that we won't actually see police officers, whether Marxist or Islamist, who are police officers or EMT and first responders, actually beginning or partaking in the terrorist attacks, which we know that DNI, Department of National Intelligence, has apparently warned first responders about these terrorist attacks. And we're hearing words that they are gathering uniforms to wear to confuse people. But what if some of the first responders are themselves Islamist and Marxist that are involved in it? Can you imagine how confused the public will be? And if some of them start engaging in shooting people, is the average citizen going to be ready to respond to someone wearing a uniform who is actually, you know, a cop, or someone who's in a fake cop uniform, or is a cop who's really a fake cop, even though he's actually a cop? You know what I'm saying? Because at that point, he's a fake cop. I mean, this can get very confusing fast. Yet you got video of these cops waving the Antifa F Trump sign.
Well, that's right. If we do get into civil war, and God forbid that should ever happen, it won't be the blues versus the grays. It won't be clear lines of demarcation. You know, this will be a horrendous situation. And but, you know, we've got to understand, you know, the cops, police are like everybody else in the community. They reflect the community from which they came. And if they've grown up in Portland and been to college in Portland, and, you know, they're going to absorb some of that culture. And as their leaders are following that culture, those who support that culture will be promoted. So we shouldn't be surprised by this.
Well, and let's go to we've talked about it.
I was just going to say, too, if you're Jewish and you get injured in a riot and you go into a hospital and you've got a Muslim doctor or a Muslim nurse, you're going to be a little concerned, I would say.
Yeah, I would say. All right, here, let's go to this real quick and we'll wrap. Milgram experiment. This was back in the 1960s. We've played it many times. This psychologist, Stanley Milgram, he wanted to try to show what would be the willingness of people to go along and even go against their own personal conscience if someone of authority told them it's okay. This is, again, something we've played many times over the years, but it bears playing again as we wrap with Trevor tonight. Watch this.
A decade earlier, psychologist Stanley Milgram had also looked at how we respond to authority. In order to understand how people were induced to obey unjust regimes and participate in atrocities such as the Holocaust, he set up an experiment. Volunteers were told they were taking part in scientific research to improve memory.
Would you open those and tell me which of you is which, please? Teacher. Learn. Teacher.
Separated by a screen, the teacher would ask the learner questions in a word game and administer an electric shock when the answer was incorrect. He was told to increase the voltage with each wrong answer.
Cloud. Horse. Rock. House. Answer. Wrong. 150 volts. Answer. Horse.
Oh. Experiment. That's all. Get me out of here. Get me out of here, please.
Continue, please. Go right on.
I refuse to go in. Let me out.
Refuses to go in. The experiment requires you continue, teacher. Please continue.
Participants didn't know that the learner was really an actor and the so-called shocks harmless.
You're gonna get a shock. 180 volts.
Oh. I can't stand the pain. Let me out of here.
Can't stand it. I'm not gonna kill that man there. I mean, who's gonna take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman? I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please. All right, next one. Slow. Walk, dance, truck, music.
Two-thirds of volunteers were prepared to administer a potentially fatal electric shock when encouraged to do so by what they perceived as a legitimate authority figure. In this case, a man in a white coat.
375 volts. I think something's happened to that fellow in there. I don't get no answer. He was hollering a less voltage. Can't you check in and see if he's all right, please?
Milgram's findings horrified America. They showed that decent American citizens were as capable of committing acts against their conscience as the Germans had been under the Nazis.
Yeah, and we have seen studies where people who were studied in Nazi Germany, experts, psychologists, and others that studied them said they would have been considered as sane as any police officer in Kansas City at the same date and time. But through group consensus, through putting on a uniform, military, police, a medical doctor wearing a lab coat, which they had the doctors in their white coats measuring the noses of Jews to say, you see, they're subhuman. That's what they were doing. People would buy into this. And this has been proven over and over and over again. And now here we are with police in these deep Marxist cities doing the bidding of the Marxist. Trevor, I want to leave people with hope tonight, but I'll have to tell you, all the signs are pointing. In fact, the studies by Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen show that a big percentage of Americans think we're headed toward a civil war. That's not what I want, but most Americans aren't as plugged in as we are, or as this audience is, and yet they see enough to know there's no way that the country is divided. There's no way it's coming back together. The Republican Party is splintered. They have splintered MAGA. America First now, many of them are anti-Semites, right? They're saying, as Tucker Carlson said on this broadcast recently, that he hates Christian Zionists. How are we ever going to see people get back together when they're hating people like me and others and in this audience? Listen to Tucker. Listen to this.
How do you explain like Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and there are a lot like that, John Bolton. I mean, I've known them all. George W. Bush, like Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen like be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. Most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, well, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that?
Right.
And I can just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody, because like, what?
He dislikes the Christian Zionists more than anybody. And yet among the Christian Zionists, you and I both know are people like you, me, others that are some of the most patriotic, upholding of right and wrong. We would never seek to dehumanize someone. We might disagree with them. We will argue with them. We'll debate with them. We want to destroy ideas. We don't want to destroy individuals. That if we saw someone who's being mistreated, an LGBTQ person, a transgender person that's being assaulted and mistreated, if we could, we would step in and stop it, or we would certainly get on the phone and say to the police, we need someone to come over here. We've got a problem. I mean, you have some of the most when it comes to ethics, seeking to do what is right and having an understanding of history and the Holocaust. These are some of your best citizens. Your Christian Zionists are some of your best citizens, and they have been some of your most loyal, hardworking, volunteering, donating Republicans, right? And now you 100%. Have a guy.
Well, Ronald Reagan was would be classified as a Christian Zionist.
And now you have the likes of this.
Carlson.
This is what's now penetrating the GOP. And MAGA. Yeah. So how do we have any hope that we can remain one country? We have completely different objectives and goals and values. We have nothing that really holds us in common anymore.
Well, see, this is because of the two. You got the fascists, the people leaning fascist on one side under the influence of the Russians, and the woke people on the other. This is the time where people straight up the middle, the classic conservative, maybe even some moderate Democrats, have just got to start calling these people out. And I commend people like James Lindsay, who has taken a lot of slings and arrows, calling out the so-called, what he calls the woke right. I call them the pro-Russia right, or the false right, or the fascists. He has taken a lot of flack by calling them out, but he will be proven right in the end. So we have to be very courageous and very bold and say we're not going to tolerate this stuff in our movement. We are straight up conservatives. And I think most people still follow straight up and down here. It's the extremes being led by Tucker and Nick Fuentes and others going off in a very bad direction one way, and the radical left, the woke people, in the other. Neither faction is going to save America. Both factions are a danger to America. We've got to be very, very bold and very blunt and very straight down the middle and bring people back to that middle ground. That's what we have to do.
Well, and you can do it through watching this broadcast and reading the books, the articles of Trevor Loudon at trevorloudon.com. trevorloudon.com. You can find them there again, trevorloudon.com. Trevor, as always, thank you for your clear-minded historical perspective and analysis.
Thank you for being a voice for many years for what is right, Brandon. So it's a pleasure to be on your show.
You're a good friend and have been for a long time. Trevor Loudon checking in tonight, folks. Check out his site, trevorloudon.com, and we'll be right back. We have a big announcement, folks, something we've been waiting on for several months, and it's now here. It's called Bella Melt. You were on it for just 1 week when you lost 3 pounds. So in the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a natural hormone that's in every single one of our bodies. And your GLP-1 lets you know if you're full. It's a satiety hormone. So when your GLP is working properly, it does help suppress your appetite as well as reduce those cravings. It's a sugar-free, fast melt caramel. So what it's going to do best is it's going to reduce your sugar cravings or any other cravings you have in your body. It's going to suppress that appetite. But where Melissa got the most benefit, I think, over the last week was the L-carnitine. The L-carnitine tells your mitochondria, this is where you we've talked about it before, this is where you produce energy in your cells. It actually tells those mitochondria to burn fat for fuel. We're noticing other people losing up to 7 pounds in the first week. 4 pounds has been about the average. As you lose weight and as you take these Bella Melts, it's going to help lower that blood sugar in your body as well.
All the information is there. MelissaHouseBG.com, MelissaHouseBG.com. Just now introducing for the first time Bella Melt with GLP-1 Fast Action.